Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the BFS Fishing channel. And in this video, we're going to be tearing down and taking a closer look at the new Loongze Airlite B101 Air HG. So I did have a chance to take this reel out and cast it a bit. And I will say that it does cast very well. The dynamic inductor rotor setting does work very well. If you make it so that it travels and it has the most amount of dynamic travel distance, it does reduce backlashes quite a bit. And then the furthest arrested or furthest away from the braking mechanism, the magnetic brakes and arrested dynamic setting, you will get a lot more backlashes. So it's more for advanced casters, but you do get a little bit more distance out of that. I found that a setting of, out of 5 different settings, that a setting of 3, the very middle one, was a good balance of distance and ease of casting. But anyways, I wanted to show you guys how you actually can adjust the rotor system. And so you can see here I have a good amount of travel, and that's because I am on setting 3. What I want to show you is basically there are 3 little tabs, so 1, 2, and 3. So where those 3 tabs are when you're out fishing, it's the easiest to use your fingernail. Now, I don't really like doing that, but that's what they recommend. So there's 1, 2, 3 little tabs, and you can use any of those to kind of get purchase on the white plastic ring. And if you'll notice, if you look inside, there's like a little, almost like a little, like a plateau or a table shape. But that is actually the mechanism that moves. And so in order to set it, if you set it to the right, fully to the right, then what happens is you get the least amount of travel. So that's the fully arrested setting. If you make it go all the way to the left, so you just take it again, move your fingernail and move it to the left or counterclockwise, then you get the most amount of travel, right? And you're probably getting about 2 millimeters worth of travel in the rotor system. So that's how the system is adjusted, and that's how it works. When you have the most amount of travel, what happens is when the spool is spinning the fastest, the rotor actually travels into the side plate where all the magnets are, and it gives you the most braking effect. So it's very beginner friendly when you have it at the most amount of travel, but you do reduce some casting distance. I wasn't able to really, measure how much you reduce the casting distance by, but, if I were to guess, it would probably be around like 5 to 10 feet or so. But that being said, it makes it a lot easier to cast, really hard because it's very, very backlash resistant. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with bearing sizes. And so in order to go ahead and remove, and also I need to get some measurements because last time I did not get measurements for you guys. And so hopefully you guys can see this is going to be the overall spool weight with the bearing on it. And let's see if we can get it to stop moving. So I'm getting a measurement of 8.23 grams, and that is the spool weight. And then we'll go ahead and get some measurements on the diameter. So, and that should be a 34 millimeter spool. And yes, it is. That's the outermost diameter is coming in at 33.95. So that's basically 34. And then the inner diameter is coming in at about 28.87. So that's about a 29. So it is a fairly large diameter spool. And because of that, I kind of attribute this reel to more of like a longer distance casting and reel. And it's more favorable to have, kind of heavier lures. I'm talking about like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 gram lures, maybe even higher. Loongze does rate this reel for up to 10 grams, and I'm wondering if it actually will go higher than that, but I have not tested that yet. Anyways, so those are the measurements for the spool itself, and I'll go ahead and disassemble the spool for you guys, but I'm going to get some gloves first. Okay, back. All right, so I'm actually going to go ahead and most likely upgrade and swap out these 2 orange steel ceramic ball bearings because they're quite loud actually on casting. I do have a casting video. I'm not sure if the casting video is going to come out before this teardown, but if you go watch that video, you can hear, hopefully you can hear the sound that it makes. And it's, it's a pretty standard sound for ceramic bearings, but I'm not the biggest fan. Now, let me show you guys something. When you do take out these spool pins, you want to kind of be paying attention because typically speaking, one of the sides of the spool pin itself is going to be slightly larger, or that can be the case. And so if you do see kind of a size difference in the diameter of the spool pin itself, then what you want to do is you want to push out the spool pin from the side that is thinner. And that's because it's kind of acting like a wedge. And so that's what I'm actually going to go ahead and do here. And so this tool that I'm using is a spool pin removal tool. And it's basically a little press, a screw press. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've removed the spool pin itself. Oops. And so what you see now, I don't know if you guys can see that, is there's actually a C-clip there. And that's kind of a new thing to me. I've never actually seen that before on a spool. I would have preferred to see an O-ring instead, because an O-ring would be easier to remove and probably lighter weight, although, you know, you're probably not gonna, it's not gonna add, you know, all that much weight to everything, but still, it's weight. And this tool that I've got here is actually specifically designed to remove C-clips. It's a tool made by a company called Dynamite. And I bought it for, you know, smaller C-clips, but this is a fairly large one. And this one is using a 2.0 millimeter size. Okay, so I was successful in getting this bearing off, and I'll get a size for you guys right now. So the outer diameter of this bearing is going to be 11 millimeters. The inner diameter is going to be approximately 5 millimeters because it's coming in at a 4.9. And then the thickness is coming in at 3.95, so it's going to be a 4. So 11 millimeter outer diameter. I think it's a 5 millimeter inner diameter. Yeah, 5 millimeter inner diameter, and then a 4 millimeter width. So that is the size of the spool bearing itself. And I just so happen to have a spare Rotor BFS T bearing lying around. So I'm just going to go ahead and swap that now. I just don't like how orange seals are so loud. And so we're going to go ahead and reinstall this. So you're going to have to reinstall this little C-clip to keep things in place. And I may actually look for an O-ring to replace this C-clip, because C-clips are not things that I enjoy installing or removing, especially on camera, because they are not the easiest to work with. Okay, so let's see if I can't reinstall this. There we go. Wow, this tool makes it does make a difference in removal, but it doesn't really work on like super micro C-clips, but not bad. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the pin itself, and you want to install the smaller side first if your spool pin is tapered. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not. And so the way you do this is basically you line it up. And sometimes keep in mind that sometimes these spool pin removal tools will actually not be compatible with your spool. It just all kind of depends, because if you notice, they have this kind of stepped inner, almost like a circle, but sometimes that actually doesn't really line up with your spool. And then also the offset of where the actual spool pin is in comparison to the edge of the spool, it doesn't always line up perfectly. So there are other spool pin removal tools, like for example the Daiwa SSRTW. I had to actually purchase an SLP Works specifically designed spool pin removal tool for that. Real kind of a pain in the butt. All right, so when you do reinstall it, you want to make sure that both sides of the spool pin are equidistant from the center. And so it's not like favoring or biased towards one side more. Anyways, that's going to be the spool itself. I've gone ahead and swapped out the bearing on that. And then now we're going to go ahead and remove the bearing from the side plate. I do need a replacement for that. Unfortunately, I don't have a Rotor bearing for that one. And to do this, there is a spring clip inside, and let me go ahead and show you guys. There's two arms. I use my forceps and I push in while I keep my thumb on the main body of the clip itself. I push in on one side, and then I will go ahead and pull out the pin itself, or the clip itself, I'm sorry. All right, so to remove the bearing, I have this really handy Rotor bearing removal tool, and all you do is you find the size that will go into the inner diameter, and then you just kind of press fit it in there and it'll pop right out. So let's get a size on this bearing. That one's going to be a 10 outer diameter, followed by a 2.83, so it's a 3, so a 10 by 3 by 3.96, so 10 by 3 by 4 size bearing. So that's a more standard size that you see. All right, to reinstall, you just press fit your bearing back, and then you can, what I like to do is I like to seat one of these, the arms of the clip, and then just kind of hold it there. Then I'll take my forceps and I'll kind of just gently manipulate it. You are going to put some tension on that spring, so be very careful not to lose it. And then if you see something like this, where one of the arms has kind of gone into the bearing itself, you just reposition, use your forceps to kind of re-manipulate everything, and just make sure that every part of that spring clip is actually seated in the groove that it's supposed to go in. Okay, so that is the side plate. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this reel. So Loongze actually provides a spanner wrench, and the spanner wrench is what you do need to use to take off this handle. But if you'll notice, there's kind of this these little tiny pins in a like a number 5 dice pattern, and that is actually for removal of your handle knobs. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and center everything on the handle knob cap. And I'm going to go ahead and take the handle knob apart because I am not a fan of these and I'd like to know the sizes for future reference. And then the cap will come off as a threaded cap. So that's pretty nice. And then what you're left with is a Phillips screw. And so we'll go ahead and remove that. All right, so there's the screw itself. And then you just remove the handle. Go ahead and measure the bearings. And it doesn't seem like there's anything super special about the rest of the handle itself. There is another identical bearing and a shim underneath. Ooh, 2 shims. So, like I said before, the handles themselves are actually shimmed very well. I had one that was, one handle was ever so slightly, had a little bit more slop in it than the other one, but the outer diameter is a 7 on this. I bet you this is going to be a 7 by 4 by 2.5. Inner diameter is 4, and then width is 2.5. Yeah, so a pretty standard handle bearing size. And then the length of the handle shaft itself is coming in at about 26.97, so that's going to be about a 27 millimeter shank length. So that's going to be that. I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this. Okay, to reassemble, you put the shims back on first. You put one of the bearings down. You put then what you can do is you can put the other bearing in the cap side of the handle, and then you reinsert. You need to reseat that bearing. And then we'll go ahead and put our screw back in, which this can be a pain sometimes, especially if the threaded part of that handle shank is pretty far recessed into the handle itself. Luckily on this one, it doesn't seem very far, but me doing this on camera does not make it any easier. And in fact, it makes it much more difficult to do for me, at least. Let's see if we can get this to want to listen. Okay, so there's that. And I did have some coffee earlier, so I'm a bit jittery right now. You can't really function without coffee, can you? Okay. So somehow I ended up losing one of the shims, but I'm going to end up swapping these handle knobs out anyways, so I'm not really concerned about that right now. But that's one of the reasons why you should work in a very clutter-free area. And if you guys saw the rest of my little workbench, you would you would see that it's not very clutter-free. What you guys see on camera is not the whole picture. Okay, so that is now put together. Let's go ahead and start removing the handle itself. And in order to do that, you do need a flathead screwdriver. So there's one retaining screw right there. We're going to go ahead and remove that. So we'll set that aside. And now we're going to go ahead and use the spanner wrench. And the reason why you need this is because of the way that that's the retaining clip, but the way that this bolt is actually recessed into the handle. So they've kindly provided you with an offset spanner wrench in order to remove that. And because this is a left-handed, it's going to be righty-loosey. Oh, nope. Lefty-loosey. Okay. So that's actually kind of nice. Yeah, maybe it's been a while since I've actually removed a locking bolt. This is actually a bolt and not a nut. So that's another little bit of a difference. And you'll see this kind of style in like Daiwas like to use these bolts. And there is, it looks like, oops, everything's falling apart on me. There is a little plastic washer underneath this. So be sure not to lose that because it's a very thin, clear plastic washer, if you can see that right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And then what was under that was this flat, larger washer. And then underneath that is going to be a spring washer. And I'm not the biggest fan of this design because everything, as you just saw, just kind of fell out there. Usually you'll see all of this flat washer and the spring washer underneath the star drag, but in this case, it was not underneath the star drag. So just keep that in mind. I'm putting the spool back in so that I can get a little bit of resistance on the star drag itself. And so we'll go ahead and start removing that. And to remove that, you need to go counterclockwise on a left-handed model. And let's take a look at this star drag. So everything is... This is fully machined out of aluminum. There is a washer inside of it, a flat one. So we'll go ahead and take that out. I'll put that right there next to the rest of this. But you can see how it's got a bunch of flutes on the inside of this star drag. And so that's actually what makes the star drag clicking sound. And then we've got the actual spring that makes the sound, and it does have, it should have two, yeah, it's got the two spring washers, and those are going to be inside, resting inside on the little spring, the little leaf spring. There is then another flat washer, very, very thin. And then I believe that looks like it. And so just looking at the machining, it does look very clean. The threads look very clean. I do see just a little bit of leftover aluminum shavings, so hopefully they can, work on cleaning that up. And now we can go ahead and remove the spool, because I don't need that anymore. We'll set aside our provided spanner wrench. I'm going to go ahead and open up the spool tension cap. And inside of this one, it's fluted, but there's also a anti-friction washer in the very bottom. So be sure not to lose that. I'm just going to set that aside right here. And we've got a spool tension shaft right there. It looks like a nylon material. And then you've got this like leaf spring, but it's like already resting inside the frame itself. And that's kind of a nice touch because then you don't really lose it. But at the same time, don't take it out because then you will lose it. All right, so let's get into the main body of the reel. And what I see is a couple of Torx screws. So there's one right here, there's one resting right there, and then there's another third one right there, followed up with two Phillips style screws. So we'll go ahead and remove those Phillips screws, and then we'll work on the Torx. Wow, these are in there really good. Okay, so when you're up against a screw that feels like it's almost frozen inside, and you feel like your screwdriver is going to slip, I would suggest not either making sure that you've got the right size screwdriver, but you can also give it like a tiny turn to tighten it, and that might free it up. And so I'm actually slipping on that. That's not good. Okay, so I'm gonna try to see if I can size up on my Phillips, but I may not have something that works. Aha. Yeah. So sizing up really helped with that one. It made it very, very easy to take out. So I should have as soon as I saw that, backed off and then just broke out the correct size screwdriver. All right, so let's go ahead and find the Torx sizes for this, and they do all look to be identical. So it looks like they are a T10. So a T10, and I hope that I'm able to actually access these with this screwdriver. So it looks like I can get to one, but maybe I may not be able to do this without an actual dedicated Torx screwdriver, which is kind of unfortunate. All right, so I may be at a bit of an impasse here, but I'm gonna try doing this anyways. And I don't advise that you guys do this on your reels at all. So let's see if we can't work something out here. Okay, I can definitely access this one from the side. So that's good. I can access number 2 from the inside of the reel. Yep. So that's good. And these screws are all identical, so that's very nice. And then let's see if I can access this third one. I can definitely access it, but yeah, I do think I need to get a dedicated long shaft Torx screwdriver set. And actually, that one is a little bit different. I put the reel down right there. So one of them is a slightly longer length, and that screw came out of the bottom location of the inner 3 screws. So just keep that in mind, that there are different lengths when you're going to put this together again. All right, so let's get into the main gearbox. We're gonna lift this straight off. And so here we are. Let's lift this over. I'm gonna go ahead and take out this anti-reverse bearing sleeve. And it is keyed. And so I don't know if you guys can actually see that, but it is keyed, which is very, very nice, because I think that is what helps and allows the handle to not have any kind of slop in the side-to-side movement, but also the in and out movement along the axis of the main shaft. But what I see, which is actually really cool, is that there is a C-clip almost. You can see that clip moving around inside of there, and that C-clip is retaining this anti-reverse bearing. The spool tension bearing is also, clipped in, which is, pretty standard. But would you look at that machining on the side here? I mean, those are some really, really small passes. I'm not an expert on machining, so if you guys are out there, does that look pretty good? Because it looks pretty good to me. The material itself, the side plate material, let's see how thick it is. We're only talking a thickness of about 1 millimeter. So they've removed quite a bit of material, and I think that that's how they're getting this super lightweight reel at 140 grams, which is pretty, this is a fully CNC'd reel. There's no, hybrid inner carbon frame material. This is entirely made out of aluminum. Okay, so let me go ahead and take out the main gear. Very nice. Okay, so let's just take a look at this and see what we can see. So this this clicker mechanism also has a nice washer. So that's really great to see, because I think that also helps to remove any and reduce any slop There is the anti-reverse ratchet gear. So we're going to go ahead. Oops. We're going to go ahead and take that off. And there is a Carbon Tex washer, and it is nicely greased. So that's something that you normally don't see on CDM reels, and some Japanese reels as well. I tend to not see them being greased in any sort of way. So that is really nice. You can kind of see that the main gear itself also has a very thin layer of grease. It looks like it's yellow in color, so most likely lithium grease, which is really great to see. And the drag clicker mechanism does hide another Carbon Tex washer underneath, which we'll go ahead and take out. So there's the clicker mechanism. It is using the, you know what? This is the first drag clicker mechanism that uses this leaf spring style that sounds good to me. It sounds almost like what Daiwa's got with their little tiny, like their little cam and spring design. But this is a design that I've seen more and more commonly used now, and I don't really like the sound of it because it sounds really hollow. But on this reel, it sounds really good. So kudos to Loongze for tuning it the way that they've done, because it sounds really good. And then we've got a flute ring in there, and then it looks like, I can't really tell, and I don't really want to take it apart, but it looks like, if you guys can see, there's like a toothed ring on the inside underneath this flute ring. And I'm wondering if that's another C-clip to hold in this Carbon Tex washer, which also feels greased as well. So, you know, if that's the case, that is really, really cool. I don't know if you guys can see, I don't know if my camera's focusing, but the main gear does look machined very well. So that's really good to see. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the reel, the pinion and the yoke. I'm gonna go ahead and take the yoke and set that aside. I'm already losing parts. So there's the other spring. And let me go ahead and clean this off really quickly. And, you know, what I'll do is what I do when I'm, you know, tearing these reels down is I'm basically doing almost like a pre-tune service. You know, I clean up any gunk that I see, but this actually doesn't look very bad at all. And then I just want to show you guys the machining on the pinion itself. It does look like there's a bit of a shoulder there, which is really nice to see, because that's where the pinion bearing will rest and make contact with. And yeah, the machining looks really, really good to me. So, yep, very nice. And then let's take a look at the body. Wow, this is so light, this part right here. Where's my scale? Let me just measure this really quickly, because this portion itself is extremely lightweight to me. 45.87 grams. I don't have anything to, like, you know, kind of make a reference to, but this frame, the main frame itself, you know, it still has some extra parts on there. Super light, super lightweight. I mean, that's really impressive. There are some thinner parts right here. This looks like it's a plate that's actually screwed on. There is a little Phillips screw underneath the main gear cog. So that is pretty cool to see. And I think you would access, yeah, so the main gear cog just pops off. It is keyed, and so, you know, you can put it back on easily. And the main shaft itself does not have any play in and out along the axis. It does have a little bit of play side to side, but I think, you know, the keyed portion of the anti-reverse bearing sleeve helps a lot with keeping that together. And then let's go ahead and we'll go further into the reel. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I think by removing these two screws that are right next to the main gear shaft, we can actually take off this little tiny plate. So two screws there, and then this hopefully should just pop right off, but it doesn't seem like it wants to. So So let's see. Interesting. All right, so I'm not going to force anything right now, but because it is loose, it definitely can be removed. I'm going to take out these 2 screws right here next to the worm gear, and then we'll see if can't free anything up that way. Remove these screws aside. Put those right there. The main gear, or the main shaft, is also ported, which is nice to see. Very nice touch. Okay, so that's the key right there. And yeah, so that was the key to removing this. And underneath here, there is another bearing, which is very nice. And this is the outside bottom where you see the serial number, so that's pretty cool. And not much slop, so it is shimmed fairly well on this. There is a little bit of play in there, but that's okay because everything is held in place by screws, and so there's not going to be any movement on that part. So we'll go ahead and put that down. And then this little tiny plate right here was keeping everything together. So that's pretty cool to see. And then the worm shaft can pop out. And there is another bearing at the end of the worm shaft though. So that's going to be a 12+1 ball bearing reel. So very cool. The construction, I want to say the construction of this reel itself is actually really top quality. I mean, I don't see any other, like leftover shavings from the manufacturing process. Everything is machined really well. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see all the machining marks that are kind of in like swirls and whatnot, but yeah, very impressive to actually hold the frame itself and be so lightweight. I'm not going to tear the reel down any further. I don't think I need to really take apart the worm gear or anything like that. If you guys are really interested in the future, then I can definitely go ahead and do so. But yeah, very impressive on the construction of this reel. I'm going to go ahead and put everything back together and add some of my own grace where I see fit. But yeah, good job, Loongze. This is a really well-made reel. I don't have a conquest to compare to, but I have opened up a Daiwa Millionaire, and I would say that this is maybe like 90% of the construction quality of the Daiwa Millionaire. And the Daiwa Millionaire was a very, very expensive reel. A lot more expensive than this reel. So with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this video. Were you guys impressed by the internals? If you have any questions about any of these parts, or any questions about the reel itself, please go ahead and leave me a comment in the comment section down below. I will do my best to answer you. I pride myself in answering all of your guys' comments, and I really love having conversations with you guys. If you like the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.